Well, good afternoon, Wes. How are you?
Michael, it's a pleasure to be here.
It is wonderful to have you to talk about something that is near and dear to your heart and mine, and of course, all of our viewers here. Diversity and inclusion and the impact and the opportunity with respect to economic impact. Mm-hmm. We are facing a interesting time in terms of dealing with these issues. You and I have always dealt with diversity. Inclusion is a matter that we've always been talking about, wanting to ensure that that occurs. From your perspective, what exactly does diversity mean to you? What does inclusion mean to you?
Well, it's interesting because diversity means that you can have a whole bunch of people in the room that looks different, think differently, act differently. But you may not listen to them when they have something to say. Inclusion means that you have, so the diversity and inclusion means that you have all those varieties in the room, but you actually take what they say into account.
Right.
That's being inclusive. So the problem that we have in our society is that people have been talking about diversity, but they have not been speaking really about what true diversity is, meaning that diversity doesn't really mean that we have people because they've been focused on gender diversity, which is great.
Right.
But if you think about true diversity, there's going to be LGBTQ plus people in the room. There are going to be Black people in the room. There are going to be Indigenous people in the room. There are going to be all kinds of people with different background and lived experiences in the room. And when they're in the room, you have to pay attention to them.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the only way that you're going to have a better organization, if you bring people in and you actually take what they have to say into account.
Yeah, and that's extremely important. And based on your experiences as a business leader, you obviously have had to work through this whole thread of diversity. But the important thing with respect to inclusion, so that your ideas, your thoughts needs to be brought into the forefront, so that the economic opportunities and so on and so forth that you're looking for, as well as that you want to create with your partners, have got to be central to this theme. So it's not one or the other, right? Yeah. Would you agree?
Absolutely. McKinsey did a study recently when everything blew up in 2020, and people started to pay attention to what it means to be diverse and be inclusive. And they indicated that if your company is more racially and culturally diverse, you're going to outperform your peer group by 36%. So, but does that mean that just by having those people in the room, you're going to outperform? No, it's actually by using the brains of those people in the room that you're going to outperform. So if you know that if your company is more racially and culturally diverse, that you're going to outperform your peer group, and you're not doing that. Two reasons why you may not be doing that. One, you're not a very smart business person, right? Or two, you just have a problem with the inclusion and diversity.
Right.
But in both cases, it's actually wrong, because what you're doing is leaving money on the table.
Well, you're leaving money on the table, but you're also leaving a tremendous amount of intellectual capacity that could be brought to either your boardroom, the decision-making tables, and so on, through your management structure that could actually help you to increase, as you talk about profitability and so on, create opportunity for your organization. So you need to set that environment as business leaders as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. Listen, I'm using my own example. I own a number of companies. One of the companies I bought about 4.5 years ago, when I bought it, it had zero diversity. We had, the company was losing literally $20 million a year. $20 million. It's a lot of money. People think it's a dumb idea to buy the company. But I'm in the business of looking at companies that are underperforming and figure out the reason why they're underperforming. And there's a thing called management discount. Management discount means that you put a huge discount to how the people run the business. And when I look into the business, I clearly realized that we have a problem with management. So I bought the business. The one thing I changed in the business was diversity and inclusion. The company had zero diversity before I bought it. Now the company has over 60% of the company is diverse. in all levels of the company. And now the company is one of the best in its peer group. Like the top, we have 700 employees across the country, and it's actually at the top of the game just by changing one thing. The personalities, the makeup of the team that's managing and running the business.
So there's a need for action to be taken by business leaders. And of course, we need to ensure that government are part of the conversation, right?
Yep.
In order to ensure that you get the best and the brightest
That's right.
To the table, to the community, to the environment in terms of making decisions. Yep. So what you have just demonstrated by your example in purchasing a company where you didn't have that diversity and inclusion, you understood what your objective is to be as a leader to transform. And so my question to you, what should government and business leaders do to really walk the talk as opposed to simply talking about diversity and inclusion? Because many of our business leaders, whether or not it's in Canada or globally, are simply talking. So what actions will you tell them to take in order to ensure that we can live and benefit from this diversity and inclusion?
Let's talk about government first. We know that immigration.
I ask you to be really careful because that's my space.
Don't worry. I'm not gonna hit you hard. I'm not gonna hit you too hard. So we know immigration is key to getting out of COVID and just our economy in general. And let's say the federal government came out and said, that is the case. We're going to focus on immigration. We're going to bring all these people in. And what they generally do is you go into a country and you take the best of the best, right? Take the best doctors, the best lawyers, the best investment bankers, you name it. We bring them here. And they're driving taxi cabs. They're driving cabs. Doctors are not being doctors. Investment bankers are not being investment bankers. Lawyers are not being lawyers. And so what have we done? We're doing a disservice to our society. Why? Because corporate Canada is saying, well, you have to have Canadian experience. So there's not a coordination between the government's willingness to bring people in to help our economy and the corporations working with government to make sure that those people are integrated into their companies, right? So what we're seeing, for example, is that somebody may go in for a job interview and forget about the fact that they're using the fact that they have no Canadian experience as a reason not to hire that person. The person may have an accent. And then the interviewer goes, I just can't get over that accent. It's a little bit too thick.
Right.
And as a result of that, that person is completely disenfranchised from getting that job. When an accent, I can speak some Jamaican because I'm Jamaican.
Yeah, man.
An accent can change. You can put it on and off, right? But something that as simple as that you can work on and change, they're completely disqualify you from using your brain to help create value for the company and the country.
Yeah.
So I think that where government can and corporations, they can work together to make sure that when we bring those talented people in this country, that we have a place for them to apply their talent.
Because it's an absolute waste with respect to the brain drain. You also, if I will say this often, I say this often, is that basically you're amputating the spirit of those learned individuals who have done, great work elsewhere. And when they come here, we put them to driving a taxi cab. Now,
nothing wrong with driving a taxi cab.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody has to do it, right? But I don't think a doctor should. I don't think an engineer should. I don't think a lawyer should.
Right.
Right? Because the reason why you took those jobs and you go to school to be educated like that is so that you can contribute to a certain segment of our society that need that kind of talent.
Right. So I think governments are listening. I think that Minister of Labour, Monty McNaughton, has made some changes with respect to legislation, so on, to reflect the very thing that you have just spoken about. The other issue, though, it seems that many of these accreditation organizations like boards and associations, they also create a barrier with respect to entry, because while they may be very pro diversity, they're not pro inclusion.
Yes.
And that creates a problem. So now you have actually done something to address this. Mm-hmm. You, as a result of what we've seen and heard with respect to George Floyd, the pandemic, and so on, you have used your skills, your experience to change the narrative. Mm-hmm. You have founded an organization, BlackNorth. Tell us about that. Tell us how BlackNorth is using diversity and inclusion to actually change the dynamics?
So when George Floyd got murdered, everybody was dealing with COVID and all the issues that came out of COVID. You know, is my company going to survive? And we're doing all these different things. I'm on the board of Sick Kids Foundation, Toronto International Film Festival, Pathways to Education, and we're worried about whether or not our organizations are going to survive. And then somebody asked me to watch the video, and I literally watched the video of George Floyd being murdered, and it actually changed my life. And I stood up. I was in my home office, and there's a mirror in front of me. And I look in the mirror, and I literally saw George Floyd looking back at me. And so I was changed. I wrote an article, and it was published in the newspaper, Globe and Mail, when I look in the mirror, I see George Floyd. Because I start to recount all the experiences that I've had of systemic racism in this great country of ours. You know, for example, when I pull up, I drive a nice car. Nothing wrong with that. One of them is a Ferrari 458 Spider. I pull up at the Four Seasons, and I get out of my car, dressed like this, and somebody would hand me $20 to valet their car for them. Mm-hmm. Somebody would come to my house in a very prestigious neighborhood in the city of Toronto and ask me to go get Mr. Hall, or if I'm the security guard. Yeah. I stand in the line of the priority line in the airport, and they tell me to go to the commercial line. I'm in the wrong section. Yep. Right? Now, the first time it happens, funny, haha. Second time, a little bit annoying. But when you realize that it's going to happen to you for the rest of your life, how funny is it then?
Not at all.
Not at all funny, right? So as a result of that, I decided that I'm going to do something about that, and I'm going to change the conversation. So I founded the BlackNorth Initiative. And one of the reasons is because we look at corporate Canada, and we look at the very top of corporate Canada, and it's not very inclusive. Yeah. They're not even trying to be inclusive. Right, so I'm going to try to throw out some math here. If I'm wrong, correct me, because math is not my thing. Okay, so last year, for example, in 2020, when all this was going on, in corporate Canada, I'm going to focus on publicly traded companies, companies who go to moms and pops to get money, and they don't discriminate against if those moms and pops are black or white or whatever. And so we're going to look at those companies, right? In 2020, there was 17 black board members in those companies, right? In 2021, it went up to 19, 11.8% increase. Wow, that's a big jump. But there are 533 positions that year, right? So that's a 3.6%, of the number were black directors. Now, if you actually, so the company signed a pledge, the BlackNorth pledge, that by 2025, we're going to have 3.5% of our CEO, of our board black, and 3.5% in the C-suite black. Yeah. Now, at that rate of change, it's going to take 33 years to make that happen. It's not going to happen by 2025. So drastic things has to happen. Now, if we break it down further and look at all the companies on the TSX and all their board positions and their CEO and their C-suite positions, there's 6,034 companies that positions on the TSX. Right? There's in 2020, there's 42 of those positions that were black. 42. Yeah. And then you go down to the C-suite, there's 6,065 positions, and 70 of those positions black, 1.3%, and numbers are ridiculous. And I can keep on throwing numbers out in terms of the composite index, for example, 2241 composite index, only 29% of those board positions are black. Yeah. Then we go down to the C-suite, and we had 2,2655 positions, only 29 are black, right? So those numbers are really bad numbers, and why? Now, those are the creme de la creme positions. The boards, the C-suites, they pay a lot of money. They allow me to drive a Ferrari if I have a job like that. Yeah. They allow me to stay at the Four Seasons if I have a job like that. It allows me to be in the front of the airplane if I have a job like that. Yeah. It allows me to live in a nice neighborhood in the city of Toronto if I have a job like that. If I have no jobs like that, then I'm going to be discriminated against. Of course. Yeah. Because nobody's used to seeing somebody like me in those positions, earning those positions, that pay, to be able to be entitled to that compensation.
So this opportunity here at the forum, and I wish there were more people here, but of course this is being recorded.
They're all watching.
They're all watching, right?
Watching
I think it's really important, though, in terms of our recognition. Just because you're black, you're not stupid. My mother would always tell me that just because the book doesn't know you're black, so don't tell me you can't do the work. And I think it's important for me to make those comments. You and I can make those comments, right? Yeah. Because I think at the core of it is racism.
Yeah.
At the core of it is systemic racism. At the core of it is a view by many that because you look like who you look like, there's no way that you can bring value to benefit the organization because we're talking about economic impact. And I think these conversations must be had by all. One of the things that has happened to me recently in having some discussions around trying to make sure that we get more people into the funnel. Because as you know, the small point of the funnel is very narrow. So I'm told often because there'll be lots, you just can't get as many in. There isn't really the sort of concerted effort to really make it happen. Yeah. The dialogue that we're having today is around recognizing what businesses have to do and what government have to do. Yeah. So what are some of those promising things that you see through your business connections that will bring about the changes? Because unless the changes come about, we're not going to be able to fill those positions with respect to a diverse boards and inclusion. Yeah.
I think the excuse that people are making is that there's just not a lot of talent, and I think it's just a ridiculous excuse.
Yeah.
It's, if you're a company and you're looking for directors, what do? You usually hire a headhunting firm in a lot of cases, and they go out and search for the person you're looking for. But yet when it comes to inclusion or hiring black folks, they go, we can't find them.
Yeah.
How do you find the other people? You go search for them.
Right.
Right? But yet all of a sudden you're looking for me and you can't find me.
In a diverse city.
In a diverse city because you're not searching for me.
Right.
You
not looking
want
hard
me.
enough.
The thing about C-suites and director position is that you have to be invited to be a part of it. I can't go to corporate Canada and knock on their door and say, I want to be a director.
Yeah.
Bring me on. Yeah. No, it's an invited position, just like a private club in the city of Toronto.
Yeah.
You can't just knock on the door and say, I want to be a member. You got to be invited. So what we're saying is this to companies, that there are a lot of great talent out there. I'm one of those talent, for example, because when I started my firm, Kingsdale Advisors, nobody would loan me $1 to start the company. So what? I invested in myself. Yeah. Within 5 years, the company was worth $100 million. Who lost? Right. Everybody else. Who gained?
You gained.
Me.
Absolutely.
Right? So what I'm saying to black entrepreneurs of color, if people want to invest in you, invest in yourself. Right? Because ultimately, they're going to see that they're missing out. And all of a sudden, guess who's behind me knocking on my door? All the banks, all the financial institutions, all the companies that go, I don't want to invest in that guy. Now they want to invest, but guess what? The door's closed.
So as you talk about investing in yourself, you and I are both ICD, Institute of Corporate Directors. We've actually gone to Rotman's, taken the course, and so on and so forth. So we're investing in ourselves. Yep. Even though we do that, though, the point that you make about not looking for talent, it's something that we've got to open that window of opportunity to ensure that that occurs. Let me give you an example as to what happened not too long ago to me. I spoke with a owner of a very large company. He mentioned that he wanted to have a diverse board. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I was having a corresponding conversation with a black gentleman who is a CA and so on. He was looking for board opportunities. I was able to make the connections to both of them. In January of next year, that gentleman will start with that organization. Mm-hmm. Well, I can't reveal what it is now. The point that I wanted to make, and perhaps you could speak to that because you have people watching, ensuring that you can make the connections and reach out to folks who potentially can help you to open those doors. Of course, after you've invested in yourself to make sure you have all the trainings. What's the process that you would actually, sort of help a young person, BIPOC person, to sort of go through the varying criteria to help them to help themselves?
So the thing about the BlackNorth initiative is about economic empowerment. It's about creating opportunities and filling the so-called gaps that companies think exist. So we provide mentorship. We provide board readiness to members. We have a database of all kinds of black folks, and we're going to add people of color and indigenous people to that database as well that are ready to go in that boardroom and perform right now.
So you just touched on something really important in addition to all the other things you were saying. You said we're going to add BIPOC. Right? Yep. So we're not simply saying it's only a black thing. No. It is much larger, but of course we have to focus our attention in terms of the conversation we're having here.
Yeah.
So you are recognizing what the difficulties have been. You don't want to be part of that exercise. So you're creating a new narrative with BlackNorth and the work that you're doing?
The reason why we had the conversation around gender has moved ahead the way that it has, and we now have women on boards, and the number is going to be 50% by 2022. And a lot of companies are saying we are 40% right now.
Right.
The reason why was because it was a focused dialogue. We would like to see women on boards.
Yes.
Period, full stop.
Yep.
Okay? It wasn't a scattershot approach that was taken, or otherwise it wouldn't have been achieved.
Right.
So we're saying, okay, let's apply the same conversation to the most underserved group among us.
Yeah.
The folks that have no representation at all. And let's focus our conversation on those people. And once we're seeing results, let's now include others using the exact same approach. So the reason why we're saying the BlackNorth and saying let's focus on Black, because they're the most underserved and underrepresented. And once we start to get a dent in focusing on that group, let's include the Indigenous community, let's include people of color. And then all of a sudden, we won't have any issues about whether or not we include or not include people. But we have to start with a certain place and focus our energy there, and then use that same approach, because that's what we do in business, right? If you have an underperforming division in a company, you don't just go, let me focus on all the divisions, the ones that are hitting the lights out, the ones that are average. We're going to focus on the one that's underperforming.
Right.
And we're going to put a lot of energy into making them perform. And if they can't perform, we're going to get rid of that division.
Talent is such an important thing for organization to harness and to develop. This is an area where we're failing so many. And so as a corporate leader, what message do you have to those, CEOs and leaders to say, look, enough is enough. We're not asking you to put people in place who are not capable. We're asking you to develop a platform, put people in place who are capable. What's that process? What does that look like for you? What's the message to corporate Canada? Well, actually, forget corporate Canada. It's the world.
It's the world.
Right?
Yeah, it's not a Canada problem. It's a world problem. So I'm a Raptor fan. And
Raptors.
Yeah, and I used to be sitting there, spend an expensive ticket on the court side watching the team lose day in and day out. They lose a lot before, right? And Casey, I'm like, Casey, why don't you play the bench? He refuses to play the bench players. He just stuck with the starters, and the starters were losing. They just didn't have their legs. They weren't shooting the ball, and he wouldn't. They fired him. He was coach of the year when they fired him.
Yeah.
They put Nick Nurse, who was working for him, as the head coach.
Yeah.
His first year, he won the championship. He was using the bench players.
Yes.
The bench players became the starters, right? But the other guy wasn't using them, and he was losing. He used them, they won. We have the same thing in corporate world. We have a lot of Black and people of color and Indigenous people sitting on the bench. They're talented, capable. They're not inviting us to play.
That's the message.
And all we want to do is to play to win the game with them.
Right.
Right? And so what we're saying is, include us.
Yeah.
Give us the ball. Let us try to shoot the basket.
Yeah.
If we're not shooting the basket, if we're not winning, bench us.
Yeah.
We're not asking for special treatment.
Yeah. So, when I think about the notion of inclusion, it's near and dear to my heart. So it has to come from the heart with respect to the decision makers, right? Diversity, you can legislate it, right? Mm-hmm. You can put those policies in place. But the inclusionary piece is a piece that has to come from the heart, because when you look out into the real world, you see people being brought in, recognizing what the opportunities and the benefits are. So we have to ensure that it's taught in schools. We have to ensure that the corporate C-suites and so on are talking about it. We have to ensure government, because what goes for business also goes for government. So we have about a minute and a half, and I can't believe that 25 minutes have gone by already. But let me just say this and ask you this particular question. A lot of young BIPOC kids and Black kids are out there. A 7-year-old boy, a 7-year-old girl, what is your message to them to ensure that they become part of that group that will be in the leadership structure, that will be on boards, not just, by the way, paid boards, but non-paid boards, because some of the same problems occur in non-paid boards as well?
Well, I would say representation matters. So it's up to us as leaders to make sure that we show them what's possible.
Yeah.
Right? Because if they don't see it, They won't do it. I'll give you an example of my own example. You know, I came to Canada September 27th, 1985. I came here with nothing. And I applied for my 2 brothers and 2 sisters and my mother to come here and live with me. I was 19 years old at the time. My brothers saw me. I was working in the mailroom on Bay Street. And my brothers saw me going to work, and they said, I'm not going to go out like that. I'm not going to be like you, man. You're slaving for the man, all this kind of stuff. There's a bunch of kids down the street. They were selling drugs. Yeah. And they were having a good life. And they went down there. And they decided to do what those guys are doing. One of them got murdered. The other one got deported to Jamaica. They didn't see a West Hall. Yeah. They didn't see a model like me. And as a result of that, they took a different path. Yeah. Now, just before I came here, this gentleman, Donald McLeod, Justice McLeod, you know him. Yeah. He's a friend of ours. He's the only black judge in the Peel Region Court. A gentleman came up to him in the courtroom and he said, I would like to speak to you, Justice McLeod. And the gentleman said, he called him in his chamber, and the man said to him, Justice McLeod, I just want to let you know, I was in federal prison, and I was watching the television, and I saw you and West Hall on the television. And that moment, I said to myself, I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to make something of myself like those guys. Yeah. And you know what happened to him? He started his own business, and he's now contributing to society because he saw something that was possible. Yeah.
If you can see it, you can imagine it, you can dream it, you can be it. And I think that's a message, because if we continue to create the situation where we don't show and demonstrate that we can deliver, that we are intelligent, that we can make a difference, and we can contribute to your bottom line, if you don't take that as an opportunity for change. Diversity matters, but inclusion won't matter, because at the end of it, we will all be poorer for it. That is, I think, the message. I'll give you the final word.
And I'll final word saying the reason why I'm this rich is because I invest in BIPOC.
Sorry, can you say that again, please? Yeah. Say that again. Say it, brother. Say it.
You know, the reason why I invest...
Loudly, please.
Yeah, the reason why I'm this rich and successful is because I invest in BIPOC people. Period.
And I have to say this, because I think some people hearing it may be thinking you're being boastful. No. You're not. What it is, you have to remind yourself as to who you are, how you've arrived, and how you've achieved your success, because that messaging has to be also, appropriate for you to remember. And that's a good message.
Yeah, and I'll quickly say this. The reason why I can make that boast is because when I started my company, I had my picture on the website. And people saw a black man, and all the immigrants came to this country that were turned down by all the banks, came to me because I was black. Right? And I didn't care about their accent. I didn't care about their job experience. You know what? It's the easiest thing to hire people based on their resume. Yeah. Any monkey can do that. Right. Hiring people based on their potential is a skill that not a lot of people have. And that's how you create delta. Yeah. That's how you create value. By taking somebody from here and then train them to create value for you. So yes, I take those people because they're attracted to me because of what I look like, and they know I'm not going to discriminate against them, and I'm not going to look at their resume and go, no, you're not a fit here. Yeah.
Wes Hall, it has been an absolute delight to be on the stage with you to talk about transformation and change that's coming, that you and all of us shall be part of, because it makes us better, not only in terms of material wealth and benefits, but from a perspective of the psychology of human psychology, the ability to ensure that we're all inclusive, working together. Thank you so much, Wes. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, brother. Yeah.